I am excited to welcome a different guest today to the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. You're going to notice that he is not a grandma. And we're going to be talking about something that I've been mentioning quite a bit, but don't know a lot about. So I'm especially excited to have Robert J. Bernstein, who is the founder of the Bernstein Cognitive Method. He is a Columbia educated autism specialist focusing on neurodiverse relationships in early life and language, with 35 plus years of experience in his private practice, and award-winning author of the Uniquely Normal or of the book Uniquely Normal, with a foreword by Temple Grandin. And I want to talk about her too. Rob is an international speaker. He's been featured in Dateline and the New York Times, and he is a board member of the U.S. Autism Association and Autism Today. He has consulted with organizations including the NYC Department of Education and Bronx Lebanon Hospital, and his method has proven effective for a wide range of women. He has spent much of his career working closely with clients over the age of 45. And I'm very excited to have him because one of the things that I've started to learn is that there's an overlap with autism and ADHD, and that a lot of times you don't see the autism until the ADHD is treated, but also because there's more awareness. So it's been one of the things that I've said we need to be covering more of. And so I'm very, very glad that you've reached out to be on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for having me. And by the way, we're video. It's video as well as audio, right?
Right. It's a podcast, but some people like to watch it on YouTube. And I'm going to apologize to anyone who's watching it. As I was telling, are you Dr. Bernstein, Robert? What would you like?
No, just Mr. Bernstein's fine.
Mr. Bernstein. What I was sharing.
You could call me Rob.
Okay. I was sharing with Rob that I am not in my normal podcast spot because of my DOG. He has figured out that when I sit in my podcast spot, he can manipulate me for treats. And so I'm like, I'm going to try a different scenery. And of course, now he's sitting quietly and not begging for any treats.
So you have to spell DOG, otherwise he would know what you're saying.
He might. So I'm just, covering all the.
Am I allowed to use very colorful language or no?
Absolutely. I love colorful language.
It just reminds me of the saying, don't say shit in front of the KIDS.
Exactly. So, yeah. Anyway, so welcome. Tell me a little bit about you and how you ended up doing this work.
Yeah, well, first I want to just right away comment on what you said, which was so true. Depending on what study you use, about 70% of kids who have autism have ADHD and vice versa. So we're talking about at least 50% of people who have ADHD also could be classified as autistic. So the overlap is enormous. So being in the field for decades, more than 40 years, I've become kind of an expert, not only on autism, if I could call myself an expert. I wrote a couple of books and so forth, as well as ADHD. So we both should be very comfortable speaking about, ADHD. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with, in the book that you mentioned, Uniquely Normal, I have here a 62-year-old grandmother, or grandmother or grandfather. No, he was a grandfather actually, who had ADHD, and I had to figure out what to do about, his wife is complaining about him, and maybe we'll go into it in a little bit. But so I've been working with elderly people as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the podcast really isn't quote unquote elderly. I'm gearing it towards midlife and beyond because I'm 56, which is not quite elderly, but, we have different challenges and, I could get into all of that. But one of the things that I had heard is that they used to think you could have ADHD or you could have autism. And so you would get one or the other diagnosis, but nobody was getting diagnosed with both.
That's the next phase of, I think, this special education, or this area where there's so much overlap. It's yeah, you can't ignore the overlap among different uh, difficulties. And the thing that practitioners need to understand is that you have to treat the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah,
can't look at an ADHD person and say, "Oh, we need to give this person meds," and ignore ignore everything else. I mean, we're going to learn. I mean, I've been doing this for decades, but I think the field is going to learn that you need to take a look at the whole person.
absolutely. I think we're more than a label. I mean, and one of the things that I've heard about ADHD and autism is if you meet one person with ADHD or you meet one person with autism, you've met one person, because we all have different challenges and strengths. But I do want to go back to, how did you end up getting into this?
Well, I have a brother on who has ADHD and autism, and I have a son who has autism and ADHD. Um, and I was recently diagnosed as being autistic, although I'm in denial right now, but don't tell anybody. Um, so that was part of it. And I think as I progressed in my education, and when I was in Columbia, I tried to find a field that people were not really being productive in understanding the minds of these kids who are mostly autistic. The ADHD, the field sort of figured it out because of the medication for it, and I think that kind of missed a lot of things. And now I could go back to my ADHD or my behavioral training and say, wait, there's another way of looking for it. So I think between my education and my family, who were brought up with being autistic, I think I kind of gotten into the field.
Okay, great. I don't know as much about autism. Like I said, I'm an ADHD coach, wrote a book on ADHD, and briefly mentioned in my updated version that we do need to start talking about AUDHD, because the two, in
Right.
fact, I was at the neurodiversion conference and I was standing in line to get coffee, and a woman with me was saying that she had just recently been diagnosed with autism. I've heard this a couple times now, because now they've treated the ADHD, which can be, a lot, and then it unmasks the autism. And so a lot more people at conference were saying that and I just touched on it and just said, hey, this is a thing, but I'm not really getting into that. So I love that we're getting into that today. And I wanted to share one other thing with you. You mentioned Temple Grandin, and I recently watched her documentary.
Mhm.
And for those of you who don't know who Temple Grandin is, she has a PhD in something having to do with cows and the way that they are treated. But she also has autism, and she became one of the very first advocates and public people to discuss her autism. And watching her documentary was fascinating. But the one thing that stuck out for me was that she invented this like contraption that would sort of like close her in when she was feeling stressed out. And I have all three of my children have ADHD, and I suspect one may have autism as well. But one of my kids, when she was just out of control, and I didn't know that either of us had ADHD at the time, but I found that if I hugged her really tight, she would calm down. And we all have weighted blankets, which I would imagine is very similar to Temple Grandin's thing. So anyway.
Yeah, no. I would say it's at least 80 to almost 100%. Really, it's that great a number of people on the spectrum who has sensory sensitivity.
Mm.
And the idea of just hugging somebody and having your body physically calm down is could do wonders. I mean, I guess everybody likes, well, maybe not everybody, but many people like to be hugged, and there might be a physiological reason for that.
Mhm.
Some person who was getting a PhD at Harvard said, if you get hugged every 30 seconds every day, there's a study somewhere to show there's some medicinal value of being hugged every day for 30 seconds. So Yes, your point is well taken. That there's a sensory thing going on, maybe in a lot of us. The AU I'm writing a book now with someone from Yale, and we're going to have a whole chapter now on AU because it's becoming surfaced,
Hmm.
and then we're interviewing people who have both.
Hmm.
So you have people who have ADHD who are kind of all over the place, and then their autism side wants order, wants everything to be lined up and being persistent, and you can see how they go back and forth in internal confusion because they don't understand what's happening inside of them. And then when we talk with them and they understand, oh, that's why, it makes all the difference in the world. So the AUADHD is going to be more prevalent than we think.
Sure. So I have a question for you, just as I'm exploring this. If do you always want the order if there's autism? Because like my child who thinks that they have ADHD, I mean AUDHD, there's nothing orderly about this child. Like nothing, nothing. I have another one that does, but not this one.
So I'm not sure what you mean. I have all these flashes of
Sure.
what do you mean by order? Do you mean that's like a primary diagnosis, or do you mean
No, no,
function?
I mean like wanting like I have one child that has been diagnosed with OCD, and they need things to be tidy. They need to have, they need that of the environment to run a certain way. They need to be on a schedule. They need like very, very methodical or organized. And then the child that thinks that they may have AUDHD, like there's nothing methodical, or that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think everybody needs order, and when we're the way my mind works is that when you speak, a lot of what we're saying could go back to language and how you express yourselves. You need to have order in terms of saying a sentence, that you need order in your life to just express your needs and express what you're going to do and what's going to happen next. I mean, you can't live, you can't, every, the guru of spiritual gurus say live in the present, but we can't live totally in the present without knowing what we're going to do next. We have to have some kind of order in our lives. And by the way, there are kids and there are people with autism who really don't have that
Okay.
order. So I'm speaking, from experience. But I think we all need some kind of order in order to survive.
Okay.
So both of your kids, maybe for different reasons, they need to have this kind of order, even if their mind is totally disordered.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, and I do agree that I know with ADHD we might fight the schedule and the organization and the routine, but it's so good for us. It's really, but that wasn't, but it's okay. We can, anyway, a lot of the people that are listening to this are new to the conversation of ADHD, and they're definitely going to be new to the conversation of AUDHD. So I would love to hear about your work with the Bernstein cognitive method and what you do.
Well, what I'm looking for is going beyond the behavior. So that may rub people the wrong way because the behavioral approach is dominant now, because that's often the only insurable way of working with these kids, the ABA method and all that. And I'm looking at what's underlying the behavior. So, example, I've been thinking of this elderly person who his wife came to me and said, this guy is a genius, and he really is a genius. He actually makes optical equipment. He designs it and makes it and competes with the biggest optical, companies in the US, Zeiss, I think, and so forth. So he's really a genius, but he can't get the three things she wants from the grocery store from him. So if you look at it behaviorally, it's like, okay, I'm going to give you some kind of reward if you remember, right? You're looking at the behavior and you set that up, you're going to get whatever he would like or want, or whatever the reinforcer could be. And I'm saying, well, let me see what's underlying it. Let me see how he problem solves. Let me see how his mind works. So, so I have a friend, Will Shorts. He's the crossword editor of the Times, and he made this puzzle. And I gave him this one puzzle, part of Will's puzzle, and I knew he really had to think, but he could figure it out because he's a genius, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. Leave me alone. Just tell me the answer. I said, no, I'm not going to. No, I'm not. He refused, and I realized he's not really interested in that. It's not because there's a behavioral type problem. It's that if he's not interested, and I mean, when I say interested, I mean like in capital letters. When he's not interested in something, he just tunes totally out. And I've noticed this with other people who are geniuses. Really, if it's not what they're into, they just tune it out. And I go, whoa, could that be it? So when I'm talking about what's underlying it is that, you want to be happy with your life. You want your wife to be happy. Somehow you're going to have to take these 3 things that she wants you to get from the grocery store and change your mindset into like, you know what? That's actually important because it is important for my marriage. Mm-hmm. My marriage is important. Mm-hmm. And I had to turn his mind around. So like, okay, that's important. And once he realizes that's important, he could get 20 things, right? Because he really, so my work with the method is to look at what's underlying the behavior, seeing how the person's mind works. I had to figure that out, And by the way, this was an interesting case because I have a room full of chemistry experiments and all kinds of things that I could use to figure out how a person thinks for the first time, or something that they look at for the first time and see how they think. It wouldn't work with him because he just knows all this stuff. So I had to think of a challenge for him to really have something he doesn't know, so I could see how his mind works. So that's the kind of thing I do with almost everybody I see.
So how were you able to? And I recognize ADHD is also very interest-based. And so we don't want to do the mundane or the boring. We need, interesting and exciting and dopamine. And so how do you get somebody who doesn't want to do the 3 items on the chore list? I'm guilty myself. I want to do like the really interesting things. I don't want to do my laundry. How do you do that?
Well, you'll have to give me another example of getting. You have to get the person to buy into it. Now, you might be a special case. I'm evaluating you as we speak. I'm just kidding. So it's okay. I love that question because it's like I'll give a talk to whatever 100 people, and someone come like, "Hey, how do you get my kid to talk?" I go, "Wait a second. I don't know you. I don't know you. How can I answer that question?" So I need to know the person a little bit. I've gotten people who are just so, I'm thinking of one person, so ADHD and so destructive and so uncontrollable to control herself. So it's the kind of thing where, you need to look at yourself, which is kind of what you're doing. And you may say, laundry is, it's really not that important. There's no buy-in here. I don't care. I really don't care. You're never going to convince me that laundry. So maybe that gets off the list because it really isn't important to you.
Yeah,
and
but it has to get done. Like I can't walk around in dirty clothes that didn't get washed because then people are going to think I smell,
Right. But at that critical point, then you do the laundry, I think, or you get, what if you get somebody else to do it? That's my technique. Get somebody else to do everything that you don't want to do.
I love that. That's not always practical, but I do hear you. Like we should outsource anything that we can possibly outsource that we
It's
don't enjoy.
needed. I'm very selfish because I want to be happy. I don't want to do things I don't want to do. Nobody
Absolutely.
does.
No, exactly. Okay, so you mentioned that you see patterns in mothers dealing with guilt, burnout, and isolation, which very common in motherhood. I know as a neurodivergent person, I struggle, but I'm sure that neurotypical do as well. How does your method address that?
Well, burnout is common. So now we're talking about. I think we're talking about people who take care of other people. You know, whether it's a teacher teaching for 20 years or a caretaker who is responsible. I mean, I was just talking to someone else who doesn't uh, live with her. I think it was her sister. I think it was, and but she's taking responsibility. She has the proxy, the medical proxy, and she's taking. So that idea of burning out is a result of, and I think I'm right about this. It's a result of not making any progress with your loved one, you know, and that's where the guilt comes in too. Like you said, that it, you know, if I abandon the person or or whatever you want to call it, I can't do this anymore, then the guilt comes in.
Hmm.
And I think I wish I had this conversation. I wish I recorded it because the whole thing relies on getting that person who you are burnt out about better or improved. And I think it doesn't matter the age. I think anybody really, and I've done it. I have a high, success rate with doing this sort of thing. Um, no matter what the age, the person can improve. But here's the difficult part. You need to know what to do in order to improve that person. And it's like you can't will that person to be better. And that's maybe the biggest, because I've been on other podcasts and I've been thinking about this. I just gave a lecture a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, you know, you're doing the same thing over and over, and like, no, don't do this, do this. You know, just calm down. And it doesn't work because the person has to kind of be empowered to calm him or her or their self down, or to do something or not do something, and you really don't know what to do. That's the key. If you knew what to do, then you would do it and there'd be improvement. And that's when I describe, like you asked me to describe my work, I've come to that saying, I don't know, many times now, that my job is to know what to do. Whether I do it or someone else does it, it doesn't matter so much. As long as I'm going to know what to do to get that person better. And I think if you know that, whether you do it or not, if you know that, I'm not saying it's easy to get the result, but if you just know that, what to do to get the person better, then the burnout doesn't happen. Because then what happens? What does happen? You try whatever you need to do 20 different ways, 100 different ways. I've done this. I've got a kid to talk for the first time, was written in the supplement to the Times. I did this thing to get them to talk literally about between 30 and 50 times. I lost count, you know, because I knew that was the way to get this kid to. And the same thing, if you know what to do, then you'll find a creative way of doing it. So I think that's the remedy for what you just said, the guilt and the burnout. I think that's the remedy. And that's the challenge. You know, if I could give you an analogy, I'm working on the computer and I could work for 2 hours and like get nowhere. My kid looks at it and says, "Oh no, you're not able to do this. You know, there's something else that has to be done." I go, "You just saved me in 2 minutes. You just saved me 2 hours of time."
Mhm.
because I thought I was just doing the wrong thing for 2 hours,
Mhm.
you know. So
Yeah.
so that was I was just so thankful. At least thank you. I'm doing the wrong thing. Great,
Mhm. Yeah.
really. It's sort of like that. Oh, I should use that analogy more. I just thought of that now. I like that.
Okay. And then can you share a story of a mother that you've worked with who was struggling?
Oh, yeah. Well, when you say mother, it implies that there's a child involved.
Well,
So, yeah. Well, it's a sensitive, loaded question for me because when you have a mother of an autistic kid, is that can I go into that a little bit?
sure.
When I mean a mother, being honest with me, would say, "I can't die because there's no one else who can take care of this kid." Right? You know,
Mhm.
she tells me this privately, of course, and she says, I- and she says, you know, I don't want to wake up in the morning to deal with. I mean, this is just
Yeah,
being brutally honest,
I know. Yeah.
So I realized maybe it was through her or maybe before her. This was a while ago, and I wrote her kid up in my book, uh, and that is that when the person gets helped, which is kind of what I was saying before, if you could just know what to do and help that person, I feel like I'm helping the mother maybe more than I'm helping the kid,
Sure.
you know? So when
Mhm.
you ask me, how do I help the mother? In reality, right? May not be a direct answer to you. In reality, you know, she said she goes to support groups, listening to other people's problems. It's like, well, that doesn't help. I want my kid to be better. That's going to help me.
Mhm.
I don't want to hear your problems with your kids and how your kid got that's not helping my kid. Like
Mhm.
you said, every kid is different. So this mother was really special. It's like, no, I went to support groups, and it's not for me. It could be for other people, right? But it wasn't for me because my concern was helping my kid. I'm
Mhm.
fine. She was fine helping my kid. So that's one thing that comes to my mind about helping a parent. I realize that for some parents, the best way I can help that parent is to help her loved one. It could have been her mother, it could have been her father. This case was her child. To to progress, to get better, to know what to do.
Mhm.
So yeah. Uh, so that's I don't know if that's an answer to your question or not, but it's an authentic reaction to your question.
The questions were given to me by whoever sent them to that was promoting you. So, any other parting words you want to share before we end the podcast today?
Oh, parting words. Uh, well, the number one, don't give up. Really, don't give up. I had an argument. I had many arguments with my editor when I wrote, this book, Uniquely Normal, and I really felt strongly about this because my first story was 2.5 years old. The last story was 62.5 year old, and she wanted to put it in order of age, like 2 to 6, 7 to 12, whatever. And I said no, because somebody with a 55-year-old, that they have to deal with, could look at what happened. These are stories of what I actually did with kids and adults and teens. They could look at what I did with a 6-year-old, and that would be perfect for the 55-year-old because we're dealing with the mind
Sure.
and how you'd get the mind better.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't want it to be in order because it gives the impression that if you're, 22 years old, look at the chapter on the 22-year-olds and the 20, and which is fine. I mean, like you could start anywhere. Is kind of where I'm saying. And my editor said, I understand, Rob. I get it. But the rest of the world isn't going to understand it. The rest of the world is going to think in terms of chronological order. That's
Sure.
going to make sense. So that's
Mhm.
one argument that she won. But the point, but the point is that, if you have somebody in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I mean, look at that person like the person's four. That's what I do. I want to see how their mind works,
Mhm.
and what could be done in terms of getting that person, improved. This idea of the 62-year-old thinking is that something's not important and he just ignores it. Why can't that be true for a 7-year-old? Really?
Absolutely.
So that's my parting words. Don't give up. Take a breath. If you don't know what to do, fine. That's where the support groups may help.
Mhm.
I need to know what to do for this, or a professional,
Mhm.
or someone who you think is smart. Yeah, I don't know,
Mhm.
or coming to you. Uh, Say, okay, I don't know what to do. I mean, that's great if you can say that to yourself. Find what you can do to help your loved one.
Sure. How can people find you, and who should find you?
Oh, um, interesting. Who? um, Learning, any kind of learning issue. My specialty is autism. That's where I wrote my book. But when someone has a learning issue, it's the same. My process is the same as finding the way they think and uh, what they don't do with their minds. So my website is Robert J. Bernstein, which is my name, robertjbernstein.com. And that would be, I mean, you could email me directly. But you can get my email really through my website, robertjbernstein.com, and I will respond to everyone. I don't I if I don't get back within a day or two, just you know
Sure.
make make sure you continue to get me, because I missed your email or something. My email, by the way, is RJB, my initials, RJB at autismspeech.com.
Oh, well, that's RJB at autismspeech.com. And Bernstein, for those of you who aren't watching it, is Bernstein. So, well, I very much appreciate you coming on the Grandma Has ADHD podcast and sharing your wisdom. And for all of you who are listening, as I like to say, it's never too late to make the rest of your life the best of your life. Thanks so much.
I like that. Thank you, Jane.
Mhm.
Bye bye.